What's the playbook for building an investment portfolio worthy of the big leagues? Well, believe it or not, the X's and O's are remarkably simple. Jed Collins would know. He's an NFL veteran who learned from the financial highs and lows of his fellow players. Now, this fullback of finance is showing everyday people how to run the field. So let's hear his top tips for managing your money. You're watching Inside Investing. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Inside Investing, the show that helps you level up your financial knowledge and sharpen your investing skills. Presented by TD Direct Investing, named Canada's best online brokerage by the Globe and Mail for 3 straight years and counting. I'm your host, Rob Moise. And of course, you saw me there all decked out in my football gear, ready to talk pigskins and portfolios with today's guest speaker. And I promise to pack as many football puns into our conversation as possible for your enjoyment. Probably some mixed sports metaphors in there too, if I'm being honest with myself. But without further ado, here's the kickoff. Joining us is Jed Collins, a former NFL fullback turned certified financial planner. He played 7 seasons in the NFL, including with the New Orleans Saints and Detroit Lions. Now he's a financial literacy advocate and educator and the founder of Money Vehicle, which helps students and athletes alike understand the basics of saving and investing. Jed, it's great to have you with us on the program. Thanks for taking the time to chat.
Rob, a quote I love to live by is never delay gratitude. So just super grateful for being here, the opportunity to share my message. And I got to be the first to congratulate you. Nice catch.
That's great. Hey, it's all about the throw, right? That's what makes a difference.
That's a true team player right there.
All right. I like it. I like it. And listen, speaking of team player, Jed, you've got an incredible story. You know, you're this undrafted free agent who made the NFL. You got cut from a bunch of different rosters several times along the way and kept that dedication. It's fantastic. Just take us through the highs and lows of how you were able to beat the odds and live your dream as a pro athlete.
No doubt. Well, coming into the business of football, you get humbled going through that draft process and really having 32 teams tell you no 7 times over. And walking in, you realize you're an afterthought. When they start looking at that roster, they're really starting to identify who we have from last year, who did we bring in, and then who did we draft. The undrafted guys are really supposed to be just camp bodies. But I've always said that the reason I was able to survive and then find success in the league is because I'm a really hard guy to kill. I look at the idea of failure and I welcome it. I consider myself a great failure, and it's because I've reframed what that word means to me. I would challenge any and everyone who wants to go achieve something of greatness and be successful that you have to start reframing that word fail. F-A-I-L to me is my first attempt in learning. I look at getting cut time and time again, 13 times a baker's dozen in my NFL career, and every time I saw it as simply an attempt, as simply a time that I got to be around greatness and truly leaving the building. My question was not why or what or how, it was who could I steal from? How could I take from the veterans and the greatness that I was around and really implement it and put it into my life? And as we look at any journey, again, the beauty is in the journey. I could not go back and rewrite my tale, but going undrafted, surviving for 7 years was simply because I was that hard to get rid of and kill, and I gave them no reasons to leave me out of the consideration.
I got to say, I love that acronym, that FAIL acronym. And I think investors could take a lot of heart from that, too, because it's a journey, as you say. We're not going to get it right every single time. There's going to be highs and lows, of course, along the way. And speaking of finances and investing, you actually made a really surprising pivot, I think, in a lot of ways, to becoming a financial literacy advocate, an educator in your post-playing career. Most ex-players, you know, they think about coaching or GMing or training or what have you. What inspired you to go into the world of finance?
One, again, you look at and say, I didn't have a big enough name to go and be a broadcaster. And truly, I look at the guys who just absolutely love the game of football and were willing to go put in 8 to 10 hours of film to be a coach, as well as move around again, kind of like a player. And that wasn't really going to be for me. What inspired me to make my transition and what allowed me to see what my new dream, my new passion and path was going to be was fear. I looked at this dream I had of playing in the NFL. I looked at the rooms I got to walk into, and I said the 1% of the 1% are fortunate enough to be in this lane. But how many of us are walking away with the dream still intact? I looked at me walking in as a finance major, a business degree, and really having no understanding of the language of money. And I started to hear the statistics. I started to hear the odds of who was walking out of the NFL with that dream still intact. And when the percentages come out, you start to get humbled into the dream becomes more of a nightmare. It becomes more of an issue than an opportunity. And so I set out on a path to empower myself first, and I am my first student. I would start going and reading personal finance books and really just stacking things together. But it was when guys in the locker room started asking me questions, started bringing subjects, situations, and just overall conversations they had with their advisors, and started asking what my thoughts were, that I really started to see the light of what my next career and my passion was going to be. I loved being the educator. I loved having an influence and an impact on the men around me. Now, I saw and started as a wealth manager. I was an advisor. I have since, over the last 6 years, left that career mainly because I want the trust of the individual. I'm not there to sell them anything. I am truly there to be the person I wish I had when I was younger. Somebody who would educate, explain, and empower me to make my own decisions. And so as I kind of went down my path of being a student, started to find that these guys in the locker room were my ideal clients, students, I started to really see that this was something I wanted to go spend the rest of my life doing, not necessarily as a wealth manager, helping people go from 2 million to 4 or 4 million to 10, but truly identifying how can I help the most people begin their financial plan and really get out of the starting gate on the right foot in the right direction. And so it kind of just naturally came to me that this idea of professional sports, which we have seen passed down to the collegiate and now even high school lane, the paycheck is there. These student athletes have become business athletes. And with that, they need to start to speak this language of money. And I had my audience just kind of placed right in front of me with a few skins on the wall and jerseys behind me that give me some trust in that room.
I think it's a wonderful mission that you're on to help educate those financial literacy, hard to come by, especially for young athletes and young people in general. So let's get down to the heart of our conversation then. Some of the money and investing lessons that you learned from your time in the NFL that you feel can help everyday investors out. And for those in our audience who want to get in on the conversation, you have some questions for Jed, make sure you submit them to us. If you're watching on Webbroker, you can use the chat box to send your questions to us. If you're watching on our broadcast platform, use the questions and comments box. And if you're watching on our YouTube live stream, there's a link in the description you can follow that takes you over to our broadcast platform, and that's where you can ask your question. Okay, Jed, you kind of teased it there a little bit when you look at some of the stats behind pro athletes. A lot of people at first blush say, man, these pro athletes, they're making so much money in their careers. Yet there's some really interesting research out there that says just 16% of NFL players, they filed for bankruptcy 12 years after they retired. I mean, that's stunning, I think, to a lot of people. 16%, that's a very high amount. So what is it that they're doing that's fumbling their chance at generational wealth here?
And, you know, as we were talking before, statistics can tell you anything you want them to tell you. So I am always hesitant, but one of the things that really changed my life was the Broke documentary by ESPN's 30 for 30. It came out and I saw a number that said 70% were filing for financial hardships. That was the reality that I was talking about, that nightmare of walking away. Today, I get to work with these business athletes, these professionals, and again, the paychecks continue to get bigger. But I identify really the three main things that are giving them the most challenge. 10, 20 years ago, people would point to, oh, they bought this expensive car or too many houses or this, that. I ask them what they think the number one hurdle of their financial plan is today, and it is summarized in 3 words. We made it. That idea of having your draft party, having that group, that family, that community around you is an amazing support. And I know how tough these guys are on the field. But the truth is, as they look at their financial plan, I challenge them to treat it just like an airplane stewardess tells you to have a mask. When the oxygen drops out in an airplane, they tell you, put your mask on first. The reality is, if you are not still conscious and aware, you're not going to be able to help anyone. So as you identify who we is and we made it, I give them 3 individuals. Now, typically, some will point to a mom, dad, close relative, but when we start to look at truly who they want to help, I know how soft their heart gets. They love their community. They love their foundation. And as badass as they are on the fields, they are softies and full of heart off the field. So I look at that and I say, who is we? Can you give me the 3 names? Second year, second contract, we can always add more names. But right now, we need to really put a big barometer around who we is. The second reason a lot of our athletes are struggling today is because they are a business. They have what I call an A team. That A team's made up of an agent, an advisor, an accountant, an attorney, and an advocate or a marketing person. I would also throw in today's day and age, AI is becoming a part of your A team as well and a great resource. But as you look at that A team as a business owner, these are your employees, not the people who are telling you exactly what to do, but these are your advisors guiding you on your path. Have you done your due diligence on these individuals? Have you sat and really started to discuss what their incentives or what their priorities are? In the advisor lane, I love introducing the term fiduciary, starting to identify and understand if they have an obligation and a legal liability to put your interest above their own. As you look at this A team, we see the horrible headlines of players being stolen and robbed from by their A team. And so after the we made it kind of confine of who that is, the biggest reason right now we are struggling is poor guidance, poor advice, and putting our trust in the wrong places. That A team is such a valuable part of your business and your future empire, but really understanding the conversation with these employees that you have as a business owner. You are not there to confront them or to challenge them, but you are there to have a clear and honest conversation with them, and often empowering guys, gals with the questions they should be asking these A team members really allows that door to open. The third reason, and it's one that is as old as, kind of the athletic world, is the cliff. We know athletic times are very short. We know you are going to make hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in your 20s. But that means by the time you're age 30, your income could drop to 0. And so the biggest challenge is identifying how to build a system and really start to see your plan. And my greatest quote, what I love to hear rookies repeat back to me, is how can you look at decades, not days? How can you extend the view that you see your dollars, your career, and really your life plan in the form of decades? I have no problem or issues with you living it up and having some great days in your 20s, but this dream is going to last you the next 60 to 80 years. That is the decades that we need to start preparing for.
So then take me through, like, for an everyday person, then that lesson of, having the right people around you and being really cognizant of your money. You have an approach, like a 5-bucket approach that you like to preach to athletes and investors alike. Can you take us through that process of how they can kind of manage their money like that?
Absolutely. Everything is about routines and systems, and this money bucket system allows you to break down every paycheck you're going to receive and give each dollar a job. Employ your paycheck. If you are not making your money go to work for you, it's going to work for somebody else. Whether that's you spending it, that's you giving it to a bank. If you do not tell your dollars where to go, money is lazy and it won't go anywhere. So the 5 systems are your past, present, future, society, and compassion. With that society choice, we changed the term from taxes to society so people have a more positive correlation of where those dollars are going. We hear the old adage of death and taxes are the only 2 things. Taxes aren't a negative. Now, as anybody, you don't want to pay more taxes than you owe, so you should learn to speak money and identify where you can reduce your tax liability. But that society choice is a massive one, especially in this day and age of business athletes with the NIL era, 1099 contractors. That society choice is 100% put on your own shoulders, and often most entrepreneurs don't know about the double FICA tax just to get out the gate. So looking at how you identify your tax responsibility, That's going to be a big one. That past and present is what I like to call your burn rate. Past choices are anything due before the month begins. We just started November, and as we see November, I know I've already spent a lot of money in November before I even have lunch on November 1st. Where are you living? That rent or that mortgage? What bills do you have? Subscriptions you've already accounted for? Any debt payments that you need? All of those are your past choices because they're due before the month even begins. That present choice is the day-to-day interaction. It is what you're going to go spend on food, on furniture, on fashion, on fun. Can you quantify about how much you are going to spend in the present, in the first and foremost now of today? I always love to say the present is a gift. Money is meant to be used and spent. And when you set up these buckets, you get to look at that present choice and spend it guilt-free. Why? Because the other bucket is your future choice. Now, we have to divide future into savings and investing. This is one of those financially literate misunderstandings is most people look at them as the same when their purpose is very, very different. Saving is protecting your money from risk. When we take a leap into investing, we have to accept that we are producing and welcoming risk. You look at an investment and say, hey, this one has a 99% chance of success that will pay you 3%. This one has a 70% chance of success and it will pay you 9%. Well, with the idea of a higher return, we have to accept that higher risk. And so most people need to identify what is the purpose of these dollars. Are they meant to protect for a specific event, whether that's a vacation, that's a future purchase, an engagement ring perhaps? Looking at what you want to save up for. Those investment dollars are not saving, not protecting. They are going to work for you and they are going to welcome risk for that highest return. The last bucket is the compassion choice. And I love to share this one last because science is telling us this is going to prove to be your quote unquote happy bucket. It's going to lead to your most fulfillment and sense of purpose. And we identify students, people, you, me, we look at the present choice and go, well, that one's going to be where the fun is. We look at our future and say, well, this is what I'm really building a plan to do is protect my future. Why would the compassion choice be the happy bucket? Well, that's your family, that's philanthropy, that's your friends, that's your faith. Looking at where those dollars are going outside of yourselves gives your paycheck a purpose. And as we look at the long-term nature of what we're trying to prepare for, that is what's going to give you the most sense of fulfillment and the most self-awareness and happiness is having a purpose with those dollars. Now, when you break down your money buckets by percentage, I don't ask you to start out with a high compassion choice percentage. Give me 1%. Give me a penny for your thoughts. Find a person, a place, or a cause you want to support outside of yourself. Then you can look at your society choice, your taxes. Should that be 20% if you're in that $50,000 to $100,000 income? You go over 100,000, that's going to bump up to 25, 30, and then obviously with professional athletes making millions, could be in the 40 percentile. That future choice, though, that is one that you need to dive into and really self-discover what you're going to put towards your future. Start with, I made $1, saved a dime, that's 10%. Ideally, you move up to that 15, 20. I've even talked to some young students today who are looking and saying, hi, I want to put 30 to 40% towards my future. I also love to talk to people and they say, I'm going to put 70 or 80% towards that future choice. And then I get to educate them around the idea of taxes and the idea of your bills. But the heart and the mindset of, I want to put the most to my future I can is the right track. But we do have to see these 5 buckets and how we cannot prioritize one over the other. We have to be able to manage them in balance with one another. That system has really allowed a lot of people, and when I say students, I work with high school students at 15, college students at 20, professionals at 25. Heck, I work with corporate companies in their 30s or 40s. I'm not an advisor, so everyone is a student to me, and so that's why I refer to them as such.
I love the 5 bucket approach, and I like the little guidelines that you had there for figuring out what that future bucket looked like. I want to get to another story that you have here because you got to play with Drew Brees, okay, one of the greats, one of the legends, and he was renowned for his success on the field, but also off the field. What made him such a good, not just a good player, but also like a good investor, good with his money, that you think an everyday investor could learn something from?
I always introduce Drew as a great football player. He is twice the man and 10 times the leader he is as in a football player. Truly one of those people that you are fortunate to be around. When I say steal greatness, that is one individual I got to steal greatness from. I observed him, and as I did with veterans, I always they became my case study. And you see it walking out onto a practice field. Drew has a mechanism, a simple lock, where he looks like he's catching a pass to walk on or off the field. It is a way to have his lock in. In practice, we would go into reps, and he would do hundreds of team reps each and every day. But the first quarterback in 20 years of football I saw throw a ball to his first pass, then he would rifle his hands, his eyes, and feet to his second, third, fourth, and down to his check down, which usually was somebody like myself. But every rep, he would do that rifle system to see where his progressions were going. I eventually had to ask him, I said, I don't understand. 20 years of football, I've never seen another quarterback do something like that. And he said, it's all about his habits. It's about building the process. He defined the cue, the routine, and the reward, which comes from a few books, The Power of Habits, that you can identify those 3 pieces to a habit. What he wanted to be able to do on a field was not think about where his feet or his hands or where his progression was. He wanted to perform without thinking so he could then analyze what was actually happening on the field. What defense are they in? What did they change? Did they shift after the ball was snapped? I don't have to worry about my progression. My body and my mind are already doing that subconsciously. That was the power of Drew. He looked at everything like a process. You ask yourself, how do you repeatedly find success in anything? You have to build your habits. And so walking and being around him each and every day, he would do little things, go into his locker, and he would have the wooden pyramid of success. He would have little messages, little mantras. Each game, each season, we would have a new message to the team of our team breakdown before the game began. Why? Because he understood. We want to hear and feel the same way before every game. We want to get back to the same spot to go perform and do what we do best. A lot of people look at habits and say, oh, they're so challenging. If you want to start a new habit, focus on the reward. Focus on the why. Everybody says, well, I want to get up at 6:30 and go work out. Why? What is it going to give you? That morning workout routine is great, but until you realize the why, you're never going to make it a habit. If you want to change a bad habit, focus on the cue. What is the ignition, the flip, the switch that starts you down that incorrect path? And so as I got to be around somebody like Drew, I started to build those habits, and I started to see the impact that they could make on a financial plan. I have now got to teach thousands of professional athletes about a system called a portfolio paycheck. That is building a habit to your cash management system. You heard the 5 money buckets from our last segment. This is taking that past and present choice, combining them into what I call that burn rate. That burn rate is your monthly lifestyle. And if I wanted to look and say, Jed, I'm not super big on budgeting and I don't want an Excel type template and do dollars, this is how simple a portfolio paycheck system is. I, number 1, calculate my burn rate. That's my past, my present choices. What do I need month to month to live on? That's not accounting for my compassion, my future, or even my society choice. Just those 2 is my burn rate. Calculate that number. Let's say it's $5,000 a month. The second step is now depositing my paycheck directly into a brokerage account. Being TD, you have many brokerage accounts, millions. Get people to deposit their paycheck directly into that brokerage. Why? Because we're trying to think more like investors. Step 3, that brokerage then sends to my bank account, my checking, that burn rate and my lifestyle. I love this habit. I love this system Because if you live on your burn rate, you are choosing the lifestyle. You avoid lifestyle creep. You got a bonus, great. You stick to your plan. And I love starting to see if you can live on your lifestyle, you control your burn and your plan heads exactly where you want it to go. But all of that comes from looking at Drew, looking at his habits. And if you want, we could start talking about how he became one of the first business athletes I was around that started to build his empire off the field as well.
Yeah, I mean, time's going to beat us if we get into that because Drew's got a long list of successful ventures, I know, of course. But I love the focus on systems that you talked about there. And speaking of systems and kind of automating things and taking your hand off the wheel, I guess, in some senses, and just having things be automatic, I know you're a big fan of index investing for beginner investors. This is basically where you're investing in a broad swath of companies. You get a really diversified basket. And you're basically trying to achieve the average of whatever that index's return is, or the broader stock market in a lot of cases for a lot of index investors. I find this a little bit curious only because, when we think about pro athletes are exceptional, right? The average doesn't win Super Bowls. So why does average why can it be a win for investors?
So you're absolutely right. This is the only time and place I will challenge an individual to be average is in the beginning of their investment journey. Why that is because we don't have the expertise, we don't have the time, and we don't have really the system in place to take on the risk of individual investments. So at the onset, at the start, you look at what an index provides you. It provides you that diversified allocation. Immediately, I have not one company, but I have hundreds, even thousands of companies. It provides you the low fees. Now I'm not paying an individual manager to choose certain selections. Now I am just accepting what that index is going to track. From a tax perspective, it can save you. From a trading perspective, you see a company skyrocket and you feel like you missed out. Well, that index, if it's on there tracking what you want it to be, it will add that company into the index and remove what is their poorest performer. So I look at what an average return can be. Depends on what index you're looking at, but if that average return of hundreds, thousands of companies is between 6 and 10%, well, now I've reduced my risk through diversification. Investing's free lunch. I have inversely related companies in my portfolio. I have low fees, and I get to control the idea of maybe I don't control the outcomes, but I do control fees and taxes to some extent. That index fund gives you so many advantages when you are getting started. Now, if you are in that, hey, I have $100,000 to $500,000, $1 million portfolio, should you be solely in index funds? Absolutely not. You have to be diversified within asset classes and then among asset classes as well. So it is a starter guide. But a lot of people are so overwhelmed and so fearful of investing because of that risk that you have to take on. I find a lot of 15, 20, 25, even 35, 40-year-old students I get to work with really get empowered by this knowledge that the index is going to give them the average return of the market that they are trying to track. And for the beginner, the average return is excellent. Money is about time in the market, not timing the market necessarily. So as you build your portfolio, that foundation and those first dollars are meant to be stable. They're meant to be long-term. And if you can look long-term, use diversification, you will get that average return, which if we want to get into the mathematics, rule of 72 is a little fun trick I love to share. But as you look at how long it will take for your money to double, at a very average return, you will have a plan that continues to double every several years. And that's truly why we look at the decades. Index investing is not going to make you a millionaire tomorrow, but it is going to make you a millionaire if you continue to invest in and you continue to let the money go to work for you.
Yeah, certainly the historical track record of index investing has been quite powerful. We don't know obviously what the future brings, but it's got a long history of success for people to consider. I always find it really interesting too when we talk about average. The average investor doesn't get the average market return, right? Because the average investor is doing things that self-sabotages. They're jumping in and out of the market. So to your point about time in the market, timing the market is well taken. Caitlin, before I let you go, I would be remiss if I didn't let you ask a former New Orleans Saints, your NFL team, one of the questions that you have, a burning question you have for Jed, who played for the New Orleans Saints as well. Go for it, Caitlin, all you.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I've narrowed down to one thing. So one thing I shared with you, Jed, is that I became a diehard Saints fan right around the same time you became a Saint. So in 2010, which was obviously a huge year, following a huge year where the Saints won the Super Bowl. So my question is, I'm going to try and keep it a bit financially minded too. So you walk into the locker room with this whole, majority of people on the team, including Drew Brees and Thomas Morstead with his offside, or with his kick on coming back from halftime. Anyway, we walk into this locker room of a bunch of champions. How does that feel walking in? How does that change the locker room? What sort of different feelings? And then is there anything that you took from that moving forward into kind of your financial education and experience yourself?
I mean, who dat, always love it. And I think one of the quick ones, as you just mentioned, 2009 Super Bowl champions, 2010 did not repeat. Past performance does not always predict future performance. I think that's an easy translation. But as you look at being around the level, the standard of greatness, going and becoming a champion in this world, you are understanding that everything is now built a little bit higher. Everybody comes with a higher standard. You look at somebody like you mentioned, Thomas Morstead, still playing. Why? Because his rookie year, he appreciated and got to succeed in the Super Bowl, but he realized the standard of preparation, the standard of work, and the expectations that it was going to take to maintain. Being around a defending Super Bowl champion team, I was actually told point blank in training camp by one of the veterans, I don't know you, I don't know your name. He was looking at me and saying, you are not at our level. You are not going to be on this roster when we go try to defend this championship. And it allowed me to be introduced to what a professional expectation is going to be. I like to look at to be a pro mindset as confidence in myself, building trust within my team, and then how can I come in each and every day and add value. And I loved looking at and being around those Super Bowl rings because it was a consistent reminder of what the standard in that building was. Everybody in August breaks down their huddle and says, we want to win Super Bowl championship. The expectation and the standard of work that goes into that cannot be understated. So I loved being around greatness because it allowed me to see what it takes to achieve.
Love it. Absolutely. Who dat?
Great stuff, Jed. Appreciate that. Obviously, speaking to the importance of goals, whether you're talking about on the football field or in your investing life, having those goals and keeping yourself honest along the way can be really powerful stuff. Appreciate you sharing that. And Caitlin, of course, thank you for joining us and showing us the ropes on WebBroker. That was TD Direct Investing's Senior Client Education Instructor, Caitlin Cormier. Okay, Jed, we got a little bit of time here for some questions we got coming in. Are you ready to hear what people want to know more about?
Always.
All right, let's get our first question up on screen here. This one's coming to us from Brian. Can you give us a football analogy about investing?
Absolutely, and I'm going to touch on that last concept we were just hitting on, is the idea of index investing. And so if you were to look at what Super Bowl champion you were going to predict here in the next 2 to 3 months, you can identify how you can begin your investment journey. You can look at a single team. I'm here in Seattle. Let's go with the hometown favorite. The Seattle Seahawks are going to be Super Bowl champions. But then somebody comes and says, okay, that individual placed a bet on the Seahawks. What if you could get all 4 teams in the NFC West? So you get the Seahawks, the Niners, the Rams, and the Cardinals. You get 4 teams compared to that individual's 1. Then somebody comes to you and says, well, wait a minute. What if you took all 16 teams in the NFC? You get your 4 in the West, you get your 1 Seahawks, but now you have 16 to choose from. And then finally somebody comes to you and says, Well, what if you could just bet that somebody in the NFL was going to win the Super Bowl? That analogy and that concept builds to the single individual investor. I want to buy one company like the Seahawks. I want to buy an ETF or a mutual fund, that 4 in the division or the 16 in the conference. And then the index analogy that says somebody in the NFL is going to win the Super Bowl. So as you look at taking something like Super Bowl pickers and now choosing companies, you can see the football analogy kind of build out. I will also share another analogy that has stuck with me throughout my entire life that I took from the football field, but goes to what Caitlin was just pointing out in those fractional shares and how those little things add up. I got to work out and train with a 17-year veteran who said each and every day he would come in and steal this. He would go out onto the field. We would run 40 yards. He would run 45. We would run 50. He would run 55. We'd go into the weight room and do a set of 225 on bench. He would slide 2.5s on each side and do a set of 11. We'd go get 2 game tapes. He would get a third. Finally, when he started to explain it to me, he said all of those little things were the inches that he was going to come in and steal on a daily basis to lead to his success. And 17 years as a linebacker is successful by anyone's mark. So as you look at your financial journey, you can look at how you want to begin your investments. Do I want 1, 4, 16, or all 32 in the NFL? And then how can I make each dollar, even some change, go to work for me and steal inches? You can honestly identify that idea of compounding. Every inch, every dollar is your employee. And the beautiful thing about investing, your employees start to create more employees. So go start your investment journey, even if inch by inch, fractional share by fractional share, it will add up as you look at your bigger game plan.
Football is a game of inches, as is investing in a lot of ways. Little steps lead to big things. Fantastic analogies, Jed. Great stuff. We got another question coming to us. This one from Sarah. Sarah says, what advice would you give to a teen?
I love this question. Number one is, again, look at a long-term time frame. If I am 18 today, I have literally 80 years of an investment horizon. So it is not a sprint, it is a marathon. I would also start to challenge, because you pointed out, not everybody starts with an NFL paycheck. We start with more modest paychecks. Stop just looking at investing with dollars. Start looking at yourself as your greatest investment. As I mentioned earlier, I work with business athletes, but that just is because those people also play athletics. I look at every young individual today and say, you are the CEO of your own brand, your own business. You could go work at TD, you can go work anywhere in the country, in the world, but you are always going to be your own business. So start to invest in your company, not just what dollars can go to work for you. What skills should you be investing in today? Perhaps you're not getting paid on them. Perhaps it's not worth what you want it to be worth today. But as you look at development, growth, as you look at the future, where can new income streams come from with those skills and with those new attributes? This new world of cybersecurity, of artificial intelligence, people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, they're not going to reinvent themselves overnight. You get to reinvent yourself to a world we don't know what will happen tomorrow. If I am a young person today, I say keep the paycheck. Let me be around experience. Let me be around greatness. Let me steal habits and processes from those who are successful, because in the long run, that is going to make my greatest asset, myself, the best it can be. So if I'm a teen today, I am looking at learning, educating, following people like Caitlin, and starting to speak this language of money. Because the more I understand how to diversify my income, that old adage of go work for one company and get a pension and those days are gone. You are an entrepreneur. Even if you work at a company, you are a business owner because you are an individual brand. Invest in you. What asset can you start to develop today that could pay dividends throughout the next 60 years of your life?
And certainly getting a good financial education is one that's going to pay dividends no matter what. Pun fully intended. Not a football pun, but a money pun there. Let's get another question coming to us here. Clive has a question. What do you currently invest in for your long-term goals? Is it just index funds? Do you have any more like short-term active investing? We can't get into obviously specific investments that you make, Jed, but just generally speaking, like what's your investing strategy? How do you approach things?
So I became an investor in 2009, and my greatest joke is I put it into index funds in 2009. I haven't looked at it since. People have told me it's up, but that's the beauty of indexing is you don't have to be as active. Now, as I mentioned, you start to look at a portfolio. I have what you look at your retirement or what you want your freedom. I have that allocation set aside. Where I can now take on more risk are ideas and avenues where I think could possibly turn a single into a double into possibly a home run. As I look at the idea of investing, getting on base is your first opportunity and goal. Indexing is going to give you that single. As you get more familiar, as you get more educated, as you find an advantage, that is where you're going to start to hit doubles and even home runs. Back in 2009, 2010, when I was trying to day trade, I invested in a little-known Canadian company called Lululemon. Turned out to be a home run. It was an amazing investment, but then it challenged me, what was the repeatability? Could I go find the next Lulu? Could I continue to do that? That's where I started to realize the challenge and the idea of indexing. If you want a clear-cut path to that, Warren Buffett made an amazing bet in 2010 to any hedge fund to beat the market. Very few, if any, can. So as I look at my kind of riskier bets today, I look at things like rental properties to diversify. Cryptocurrency is a hot taboo topic in some rooms and the only topic in other rooms. But talking to young investors across the country and the world, I realize they all think it has value, which means it will have value in the future. So as you identify, I want to get my singles, get on base, and then when I start to look at what is the future, where can I take some risk, can I make some bets on tomorrow, that's where you start to see what investments have you been making over the last 5 years? Have I been learning about cybersecurity? Great. Now I know what the leading person in cybersecurity or business in cybersecurity is. Have I been learning about artificial intelligence? Where are the leading indicators there? It comes from investing in you first, and then you see the advantage you have over others. Because if you're just basing it off information everybody has and everybody knows, there is no advantage there. Become a niche, become an expert, and you'll start to see where your doubles and home runs can come from.
Yeah, interesting take on diversification beyond your standard stuff, mentioning crypto. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen with crypto in the future too, very volatile, speculative asset, but it does add an element of diversification to a standard portfolio. And at a certain point, diversification can be a great thing and help you ride out the volatility of all the different asset classes. So really great perspective there, Jed. I think, unfortunately, time beats us, Jed. We're going to have to wrap it there, but we appreciate you taking those questions from our viewers and sharing all your insights about money and investing from your time in the NFL. Really appreciate you sharing.
Rob, this has been awesome. Easy conversation. We could wrap for a long time. I hope everyone heard those messages of employ your paycheck. Money is lazy. Make it go to work for you. TD is an amazing platform that allows you access to things that 20, 30 years ago people were wishing they had access to. You now have it in the palm of your hand. Continue to speak the language of money. Start acting wealthy. And we will see you in decades when this plan comes to fruition.
Absolutely. Wise words. Love it. And as you say, investing is kind of easier than it's ever been in many sense. So why not get started today? Great stuff, Jed. Appreciate it. And of course, to our audience, thank you so much for tuning in as always. Make sure you check out next week's episode because we have a good one for you. We're going to explore how you can get your next big promotion at work so you can have more money to invest and build your wealth like we were talking about today. Social media star Nathan Kennedy is going to join us with his top career tips. That's all the time we have for this edition of the show. From everyone at Inside Investing, thanks again for watching. We'll see you all next time.